Elliot Warren stood in the middle of the courtroom, the mop still in his hand, as the entire room fell silent. "I will protect her," he said, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and resolve. His calloused fingers tightened around the mop handle as if it were the only thing keeping him upright. At the defendant's table, Ariana Lockhart, the billionaire whose own lawyer had just abandoned her, lifted her head and looked at him with utter disbelief. None of them knew that this simple moment would mark the beginning of the unraveling of one of the darkest conspiracies in American corporate history. Before we dive into this moving story of justice, courage, and rebirth, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you believe that anyone, whether a proud billionaire or a quiet janitor, deserves to be treated fairly under the law, don't forget to like and subscribe. Stories about silent heroes like Elliot deserve to be told, and you won't want to miss them. Now, let's see what drove a forgotten legal genius to rise up against the very system that once crushed his life. But before everything began to shift, what do you think made Elliot, someone who had lost nearly everything, step out of the shadows at that exact moment? The autumn sunlight of New York filtered through the tall windows of the Manhattan Federal Courthouse, casting streaks of light across the marble floor that Elliot Warren had just finished cleaning. 5 in the morning, just like every day for the past 15 years, he was already here. A 45-year-old man with brown hair beginning to turn gray and deep brown eyes, dressed in a Navy maintenance uniform with the word maintenance embroidered on the chest pocket. The tiny apartment in Queens was still pitch black when he left at 4 a.m. The room had only a single bed, a small stove, and a bare wall adorned with just one photo, the wedding picture of him and Sarah, from 17 years ago before cancer took away the woman he loved. Beside it was a picture of their daughter Mia, now 20, and in her final year of college. Though in the frame she was only 5, smiling brightly in her mother's arms. Elliot didn't turn on the lights when he left home. Winter electricity bills were high, and with a salary of $2,800 a month, every penny mattered. Breakfast was just black coffee, toast, and food he packed from the courthouse's basement cafeteria, a small privilege for maintenance staff. That morning, as he pushed his cleaning cart down the third-floor hallway, Elliot paused in front of courtroom 302, what he considered the place of the biggest cases. And today, one of the most significant legal battles in New York history was set to begin. The lawsuit against Ariana Lockhart, the tech billionaire worth $14 billion. He didn't hear about the case from the news, he didn't own a TV, but from the nights he spent cleaning that very courtroom. He had seen the polished lawyers, heard the things they said when they believed no one was listening. To them, the janitor was just furniture, invisible, not worth noticing. But Elliot hadn't always been invisible. 15 years ago, he had been one of the rising stars at Whitfield & Associates, a prestigious law firm in Manhattan. He had a corner office overlooking Central Park, the reputation of never losing a major case, and a brilliant future until everything collapsed. He pushed the memories away. That was the past. Now, he mopped floors, polished benches, emptied trash, an honest job that paid the rent and allowed him to occasionally send a bit of money to Mia, even though she always refused to take it. As Elliot was about to leave the courtroom, his phone buzzed, a message from the supervisor. "Warren, room 302 needs to be cleaned again. VIP today." Elliot exhaled. VIP meant pressure, inspections, and countless opportunities to get yelled at for the smallest mistake. But as always, he didn't complain. By 9 a.m., the courtroom was packed. Reporters squeezed in, lawyers straightened their ties, keyboards clicked furiously. At the defense table, Ariana Lockhart sat alone. She was 38, but looked as if she carried the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her once sharp blue eyes were now clouded with exhaustion. Her Armani suit was flawless, yet her slightly hunched shoulders and tightly clasped hands betrayed the tension consuming her. Next to her were 6 empty chairs, The seats reserved for her legal team from Preston, Holloway and Schmidt, the most expensive firm in New York, charging $6,000 an hour. But they didn't show up. Elliot checked the clock, 9:15. The trial would begin in 15 minutes. Ariana kept calling, and each time she put the phone down, her face grew paler. And Elliot knew. They weren't coming. They had abandoned her. "All rise," the court officer announced. Judge Caroline Fisk entered. Stern, cold, experienced. She paused when her eyes landed on the empty chairs and asked, "Ms. Lockhart, where is your legal team?" Ariana stood, trying to stay composed, but her voice trembled. "I don't know, Your Honor. They were here yesterday. I've tried contacting them all morning, but no one answered." Prosecutor Catherine Morris rose, a thin, triumphant smile on her face. "Your Honor, it is clear the defense has been abandoned. We move for a default judgment." The courtroom erupted with murmurs. Reporters typed frantically. Judge Fisk sighed. "If you have no legal representation, the court cannot delay indefinitely. I am forced to. I will protect her." The warm, deep voice cracked through the room like thunder. Everyone turned. Elliot Warren stood there, next to his cleaning cart, the mop still in his hand. The lights reflected off his graying hair, and his face, lined by 15 years of endurance, was now illuminated with determination. Chuckles broke out, first soft, then louder, but he didn't flinch. Elliot set the mop down and walked up the aisle. 2 decades of mopping floors couldn't erase the posture of a lawyer who had once won major cases in this very room. Judge Fisk raised an eyebrow. "Who are you?" "My name is Elliot Warren, Your Honor. I would like to represent Ms. Lockhart." Catherine Morris let out a mocking laugh. "A janitor wants to be a lawyer." Elliot met her gaze. "I was a member of the New York Bar Association for 18 years. A wave of whispers spread across the room. Elliot pulled out his worn wallet and produced his old license. Still valid. The judge examined it, her face paling slightly. "Mr. Warren, how long has it been since you practiced?" 15 years, Your Honor." The air grew heavier. The judge continued, "And you believe you are still competent?" "Your Honor, this woman deserves to be defended. I know the law, I know procedure, and I understand what justice means." Ariana stood. She looked into his eyes, not seeing desperation nor ambition, but sincerity, the kind that a $6,000 an hour legal team could never offer. "Yes, Your Honor," she said. "I accept Mr. Warren." The courtroom erupted. Judge Fisk rubbed her temples. "You have 15 minutes to confer with your client, and do not delay the proceedings." Elliot approached the defense table only to be blocked by security. "Sorry, only attorneys allowed in this area." Elliot held out his card. The judge nodded to confirm. The guard stepped aside awkwardly. When he sat down, Elliot felt every pair of eyes fixed on them. But he looked only at Ariana. "Something is very wrong here," he whispered. "This isn't just about your lawyers abandoning you. Everything is orchestrated." Ariana whispered back, "How do you know?" "Because I've seen thousands of cases over the last 15 years. This one isn't natural." "So who?" "We'll find out. But first, I need to hear everything." Ariana looked at him, the man she had passed by every day without noticing, the man who stood up for her when no one else did. And for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, she had found the right person. 15 minutes passed, like 15 seconds. Ariana spoke almost without pausing, trying to compress 3 months of legal preparation into an emergency briefing. She explained her technology, a quantum processor that operated at room temperature, a breakthrough capable of changing everything from computing and data to energy production. She told him about Nexus Innovations, the company accusing her of stealing their technology. And she told him about the 3 months of hell since the allegations surfaced, Stock prices plummeting, the press circling, partners turning their backs. Elliot listened without taking notes. He didn't just hear every word. He absorbed the pauses, the moments when her voice hitched. His deep brown eyes never left Ariana's face. She realized he was doing more than listening to the content. He was reading her. The tension in her voice, the hesitation when mentioning certain details, and the absolute certainty when she spoke about the technology she had created. "Time's up," the clerk announced. Judge Fisk struck the gavel. "Mr. Warren, prepare for your opening statement." Elliot rose and walked to the podium. He felt the full weight of every gaze in the room, some skeptical, some curious, some outright condescending. How many years had it been since he last stood here? How many nights had he lain awake in his small Queens apartment, dreaming of a moment like this? Only to wake up again with a mop in his hand? He placed his hand on the podium, feeling the smooth wood beneath his palm. Drawing a deep breath, Elliot lifted his head and looked directly at the 12 faces in the jury box. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, his voice calm and clear, "my name is Elliot Warren. First, I apologize for my appearance. I'm not wearing an expensive suit like my colleague across the aisle. I don't have a fancy office or a team of assistants. Less than an hour ago, I was still mopping the floor of this courtroom." Soft laughter rippled from the back. Elliot heard it clearly, but did not falter. "But for 15 years, I have stood in this room every day, watching justice unfold. I have seen truth triumph, and I have seen truth buried. I have learned that justice does not depend on the price of your suit or the name of the law firm you hire. It rests on something much simpler: the truth." He paused, letting the words settle. "And the truth in this case is simple. Ariana Lockhart stole nothing. She created a revolutionary technology through her own intellect, toil, and talent. Meanwhile, those who truly wish to seize that technology are using the legal system as a weapon." Catherine Morris shot to her feet. "Objection! He's arguing, not delivering an opening statement." "Sustained," Judge Fisk said. "Mr. Warren, keep your remarks to the facts." Elliot nodded. "My apologies, Your Honor. I will let the evidence speak for itself, and I promise you only this. By the end of this trial, it will be unmistakably clear who is telling the truth and who is lying." He sat down. It wasn't a polished opening, nor was it adorned with dazzling rhetoric. But it was sincere. And from the quiet nods of a few jury members, Elliot knew at least someone was truly listening. Catherine Morris stood for her opening statement. Tall, slender, with a smile sharp as glass, she walked to the podium as if it were her personal stage. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began, her voice smooth as silk, "this case is not nearly as complicated as the defense wants you to believe. It is extremely simple. Theft." She walked slowly, her gaze sweeping across the faces before her. Ariana Lockhart stole proprietary inventions belonging to Nexus Innovations, a company that invested hundreds of millions of dollars developing quantum processing technology. She used her connections in the industry to access internal research, copied the designs, and filed for patents under her own name. Morris paused, letting the accusation hang heavily in the air. "We will prove this with documents, expert testimony, and the accounts of her own former employees. By the end of this trial, there will be no doubt. Ariana Lockhart is a thief, and thieves must be held accountable." She sat down with the confidence of someone who believed she had already won. The rest of the morning passed like a blurred nightmare. The prosecution called its first witness, a tech analyst who claimed Ariana's design was too similar to be a coincidence to Nexus's internal records. When it came time for cross-examination, Elliot stood, feeling every muscle in his body tense. 15 years since he last did this. 15 years since he last stood before a witness, peeling back details one by one, searching for the smallest inconsistencies to unravel the bigger picture. But when he opened his mouth, something strange happened. The words returned naturally. Questions flowed into one another as if he had never left the profession. He guided the witness through overlapping details, mismatched timelines, technical logs the witness claimed to have seen but wasn't reasonably able to access. And, as the contradictions began to emerge, Elliot felt something awaken inside him. Something he had buried for 15 years. The man he used to be. A lawyer. By the end of the day's session, Judge Fisk looked at Elliot with a different expression, one with a hint of reluctant respect. "Mr. Warren," she said, "you might want a proper suit for tomorrow." Elliot nodded. "I'll take care of it, Your Honor." But as he left the courtroom, he knew the truth. He couldn't afford a new suit. The only suit he owned had been moldy in his closet for over a decade, and now hung loosely on him after years of physical labor. Ariana caught up to him in the hallway. "Mr. Warren," she called. He turned. This time, he looked at her not as a high-profile client, not as a billionaire on magazine covers, but as a human being clinging to her final thread of hope. She was taller than he expected, carrying the confident posture that money could buy. But in those sharp blue eyes, fear was something money couldn't hide. "Thank you," she said softly. I don't know why you're doing all this, but thank you." Elliot shook his head. "Don't thank me yet. We've barely begun, and we need to talk seriously. I need to see every document related to this case, emails, notes, and schematics. If we're going to fight, I need to know everything." Ariana nodded. "Come to my place tonight. I keep everything there." "I can't," Elliot replied. "I have a work shift tonight." Ariana frowned. "A shift? But you're my lawyer." "And I'm also a janitor who needs to pay rent," Elliot said calmly. "The court isn't paying me to defend you, Ms. Lockhart. This is pro bono, free of charge, which means I need to work if I don't want to get fired." For the first time, Ariana truly felt the distance between her world and his. For her, paying $6,000 an hour for lawyers once felt normal. For this man, skipping a single shift could mean not having enough to pay rent. "I'll pay you," she said immediately. "No," Elliot answered, firm. "If this were about money, I wouldn't be here today. I'm not doing this for prestige or compensation. I'm doing it because it is the right thing to do." He paused for a beat, then added gently, "But I'll come after my shift." "Is midnight too late for you?" "Midnight is perfect," Ariana said. And somewhere deep inside, both of them understood. The real battle had only just begun. At midnight, Elliot parked the old Toyota in front of Ariana's mansion gate, still wearing his janitor uniform, which carried the lingering scent of cleaning chemicals from his 8-hour shift. He hadn't had time to go home and change, and the truth showed in every dried sweat mark on his shoulders. This time, the gate guard had been told to expect him, but the way the man looked at Elliot's car said everything. He didn't belong here. As he entered through the main door, another security officer escorted him, not to assist, but to make sure he didn't wander into restricted areas. Ariana was waiting in her office, still in the suit she'd worn to court, though she'd removed the jacket. She looked exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. "Coffee?" she asked. This time, Elliot nodded. He needed the caffeine to stay alert. She poured him a cup from an espresso machine that cost more than his monthly rent. The flavor was rich, smooth, and unfamiliar compared to the instant coffee he drank every morning. "All right," Elliot set the cup down. "Tell me the real story. Not the version you told your lawyers, not the version for the media, the truth." Ariana sat, her gaze fixed on her coffee cup as if it held the answers she'd been too afraid to confront. "I started Quantum Core 12 years ago," she said, her voice softening as the memories pulled her backward. "Back then, I was just a recent MIT graduate obsessed with quantum computing. Everyone told me that stable quantum processing at room temperature was impossible. Qubits decay too quickly. They said only multi-million-dollar labs and extreme cooling systems could achieve anything close to that. Ariana's eyes lit up when she talked about her work. The first time Elliot saw the real woman beneath the armor of wealth and prestige. But I had an idea. What if instead of fighting the decay, we used it? What if the instability itself became part of the computation? She gave a small laugh, not sure whether it was pride or bitterness. They called me crazy. My professor told me I was wasting my time. But you proved them wrong, Elliot said. Ariana nodded lightly. 6 years working in a matchbox-sized apartment, living on student loans, no funding, no lab, just me and my laptop. She stood, opened a safe hidden behind a painting, and pulled out a thin folder. Here, she handed it to him. All my original research notes. Dated, notarized, everything. Proof that I developed this technology before Nexus was even founded. Elliot opened the folder. Inside were hundreds of pages of equations, diagrams, handwritten notes, raw, vivid, undeniable. Why didn't your previous lawyers bring this up? He asked. They said it wasn't necessary, Ariana replied, exhaustion in her voice. They said they had a better strategy. Elliot snapped the folder shut, jaw tightening. Not introducing your most critical evidence isn't a strategy, it's sabotage. Ariana's face paled. You mean, your lawyers were paid to lose, Elliot said plainly. The only question now is, who paid them? They worked until 3 in the morning, going through every email, memo, and schematic. The deeper they dug, the clearer the pattern became. Crucial evidence ignored, key witnesses never called. Objections made at the wrong times. A defense strategy. Almost deliberately suicidal, Ariana's former legal team wasn't incompetent. They were actively sabotaging her. Is there anything you haven't told me? Elliot asked. Anything strange that's happened in the past few months? Ariana hesitated. There is one thing. Julia Fenwick, my assistant. She copied files onto a USB drive. Elliot narrowed his eyes. And you didn't question her? I trusted her. Julia has been with me for 5 years. In cases like this, Elliot said slowly, nothing is accidental. If she copied data, someone put her up to it. He looked at Ariana, his voice firm. Tomorrow, no matter what I say or ask in court, you must not react. No surprise, no correcting me. Everything is already part of the plan. Why? Because we're being watched, Elliot replied. Maybe not right this second, but somewhere, somehow. And every plan we make, assume the enemy already knows. A chill ran down Ariana's spine. You've been through this, haven't you? Elliot was silent so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, softly, 15 years ago, I took a case against Atlantic Energy Corporation. An engineer was whistleblowing about concealed safety violations. 3 workers died. I had enough evidence. But before the trial, the evidence vanished from my office. Ariana held her breath. Elliot continued. They said I fabricated it. I forged documents to harm the company. I was suspended, then disbarred. It took me 4 years to prove my innocence. 4 years working odd jobs. 4 years watching my daughter grow up without her father fully present. They destroyed you, Ariana whispered. They tried, Elliot corrected, but they didn't take the one thing that mattered, my knowledge of the law. And that's something they will never take from you. When Elliot left at 4 a.m., the sky was still smudged dark like spilled ink. Ariana stood by the window, watching the glow of his car fade down the long road. It wasn't the first time she felt alone in this fight. But for the first time in months, in that darkness, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. The next morning, Elliot walked into the courthouse wearing the suit he had bought from a thrift shop the night before. It wasn't new, it wasn't fancy, but it was clean, pressed, and presentable. $20 he could barely afford. But Judge Fisk had been right. Today, he needed to look like a real attorney. The courtroom was packed. The story of the janitor-turned-lawyer had spread across the city, and reporters squeezed into every available space. When Elliot entered, a few people even clapped, hesitant, uncertain, torn between cheering and mocking. He ignored all of it. He focused on the only thing that mattered, the truth. Catherine Morris was ready. A deep wine-red power suit, squared shoulders, sharp eyes. The look of someone who believed the verdict was already hers. "The prosecution calls Dr. Poynton, Leonard Bryce," she announced. Dr. Bryce stepped onto the witness stand. A man in his 50s, wire-rimmed glasses, the polished air of an academic. For nearly 20 minutes, Morris let him construct a narrative in which he had developed the core algorithms of the quantum technology, and Ariana had stolen the credit. Quantum core, he claimed, was where the idea truly began. Elliot sat still, taking notes, expression unreadable. But inside, he was assembling the puzzle. The timelines, the claims, the inconsistencies, and none of it aligned. When his turn came, Elliot rose slowly. He carried a thin file, walking to the lectern with a calmness so steady it silenced the room. "Dr. Bryce," he began, voice gentle but firm, "you testified that you developed Quantum Core's core algorithms from January through March of 2021. Correct?" "That's correct." "Then please help me clarify something." Elliot lifted the first document. "This is your employment record with Quantum Core. Would you read your start date for the court?" Bryce glanced down, and his face drained of color. "April 21st, 2021. "I'm sorry," Elliot said softly. "I didn't catch that." "April 21st, he repeated louder, his voice trembling. Elliot turned to the jury. "So you could not have developed algorithms between January and March, because you weren't employed yet." A ripple of shock spread across the courtroom. Elliot held up a second document. "And here are the server logs from Quantum Core. They show the core algorithms were completed on March 15, 2021, more than a month before you were hired. Would you like to explain how you contributed to a project that existed before you did?" Morris leapt to her feet. "Objection!" The prosecution did not receive this document. "Your Honor," Elliot said calmly, "these came directly from Quantum Core's own system. If they failed to review the evidence available to them, that is not my fault." "Objection overruled," Judge Fisk said. "Proceed." Bryce's hands began to shake. Elliot fixed his gaze on him. "Dr. Bryce, one final question. Did you receive a payment of $300,000 from Nexus Innovations 2 weeks before testifying here today?" Bryce froze. That was... Yes or no, Doctor?" "I was compensated for my time and expertise." $300,000 for false testimony," Elliot said, voice sharp as steel. "Sounds more like a bribe than compensation." The room erupted. Elliot turned back to the judge. "Your Honor, I move to enter evidence of this transaction and request that the witness be charged with perjury." Gasps, shouts, furious typing from reporters. The courtroom felt like it had detonated. And for the first time since the trial began, Elliot saw something he had been waiting for. Fear. In the eyes of Catherine Morris. They had never expected that a janitor would know how to tear their entire case apart. After the hearing, Elliot and Ariana stepped out of the courthouse into a forest of cameras and microphones. Reporters shouted questions from every direction, flash after flash, bursting like lightning in a storm. Elliot lowered his head, placing a light hand on Ariana's back, skillfully guiding her through the chaotic crowd. Only when the taxi door shut, blocking out the noise, did Ariana finally breathe out. "How did you know about the payment to Bryce?" she asked, still shaken. Elliot opened his old canvas briefcase. Not the leather kind, but the kind he'd bought from a thrift store. "I didn't know for sure," he said calmly. "But in cases like this, money always leaves a trail. I guessed." And the look in his eyes confirmed it. "You Bluffed? Ariana stared at him, genuinely surprised. Almost, Elliot shrugged lightly. But after I saw his reaction, I had someone double-check. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages. My daughter, Mia. She works in digital marketing, but her ability to dig up information is remarkable. Ever since I told her about this case, she's been investigating. His phone buzzed. A new message from Mia. Dad, I found something big. Call me. Elliot looked up, turning to Ariana. We need to meet my daughter. Right now. An hour later, they sat in a small cafe in Queens, a space as foreign to Ariana as another planet. The cafe was cramped, plastic chairs squeaked, and the smell of cheap coffee mixed with old frying oil. But most importantly, it was private. No reporters, no cameras, no lawyers. Mia Warren walked in. Elliot stood up abruptly, awkward like a father, unsure whether he still had the right to hug his daughter. Mia resolved it first. She stepped forward and hugged him. A quick, slightly hesitant hug, but a real one. She was 20, with long brown hair and eyes like her father's. Jeans, a simple t-shirt, but carrying an expensive laptop, and the confident walk of someone who knew her worth. Dad, she said, then turned to Ariana. And you must be Ariana Lockhart. I'm Mia. They shook hands. Ariana couldn't help noticing the contrast, her well-maintained hand softened by luxury skincare, facing the practical, work-built hands of Mia, a young woman who had built her own life from the ground up. Mia opened her laptop. Okay, at first I wasn't sure what Dad wanted me to look for, so I started with Nexus Innovations, she said. On the surface, they're spotless, a venture-funded tech startup with a very tidy corporate history. She scrolled through a series of documents. But when I dug into the ownership structure, things got strange. Nexus is owned by a shell company in Delaware. That company is owned by another in the Cayman Islands. And that company, she paused, is owned by Atlantic Energy Corporation. Elliot froze. Atlantic Energy, he repeated. You know them? Mia asked. Oh, yes, Elliot said quietly. They're the company that destroyed my career 15 years ago. Mia stared at him, eyes wide. They had never truly spoken openly about it, about what happened, about who was behind it. It was them. All along? She whispered. Ariana leaned forward. But why would an energy company care about my technology? At first, I didn't get it either, Mia said. But then I read more about your tech. She turned the laptop so both Ariana and Elliot could see. It's not just computing. If you can stabilize qubits at room temperature, the energy applications, she pulled up a scientific article, are game-changing. She pointed to a highlighted section. An MIT professor wrote that your technology could revolutionize energy storage and conversion. It could make fossil fuels obsolete within 20 years. 20 years, Ariana repeated, each word heavier than the last. And Atlantic Energy makes $28 billion a year from coal, oil, and gas, Mia finished. If your technology works as published, they don't just lose profit. They lose their entire empire. Elliot leaned back, as if the pieces had finally clicked into place. That's why they didn't try to buy you out or compete with you, he said slowly. They needed to erase you, erase your technology, erase your credibility. But more than that, Mia continued, I kept digging. Atlantic Energy has ties to 4 other major energy conglomerates, 2 defense contractors, and, she paused again, 3 sitting members of the Energy and Commerce Committee. Mia pulled up more documents, images of campaign contributions, fundraising dinners, lavish trips. They've built a network, and when your technology came into view, they activated that entire network. What about the lawyers? Ariana asked, her voice cracking. How did they? I'm still tracing it, Mia said. But the managing partner at Preston Holloway and Schmidt? He sits on the board of a subsidiary of Atlantic Energy. The information isn't easy to find, but it's there if you know where to dig. Elliot stood and began pacing the cramped cafe. his mind moving as fast as Mia's words. "So this isn't just a lawsuit," he said. "This is a coordinated campaign to clear the path for a trillion-dollar industry." "And they won't stop," Ariana said, fear now clearly visible in her eyes. "If they did this to you 15 years ago, if they can manipulate things to this extent—" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. All three of them understood. Mia's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, and her face drained. "It's my old boss. He says I don't need to come back to the office. My belongings will be mailed to me." "They fired you?" Ariana asked. "On paper, it's position eliminated," Mia said bitterly. "But the timing says everything." Elliot placed a hand on his daughter's shoulder. "I'm sorry, Mia. I never wanted to pull you into this." Mia looked up, her eyes steadier than before. "You didn't pull me into anything. I chose this, and now that I'm in, I'm helping you fight." For the first time in years, Elliot didn't see Mia as the child who had lost her mother, or the grown woman he had missed for too many years. He saw something else, an ally, a partner. "All right," he said, exhaling as if sealing a decision. "Then we do this, together." In the days that followed, the threats were no longer a vague feeling. They became clear signs, sharp and dangerous enough to make Elliot's stomach tighten every time he thought about them. His small apartment in Queens was broken into. Nothing was stolen. There was nothing of value to take. But everything was torn apart. The closet yanked open, drawers dumped onto the floor, the mattress slashed with a long, deep cut, as if someone wanted to send a message. "We know where you live." Mia's laptop was hacked. Thankfully, she had backed up all her data to an encrypted cloud server. But the fact that someone had intentionally breached her device, and done it blatantly, sent a chill down her spine. Then one night, as Ariana left the office late, a black SUV ran a red light and sped straight toward her car. Her driver swerved in time. The car spun, crashing into a lamppost to avoid a head-on collision. Ariana escaped with only scrapes and bruises, but the message was carved in stone. She was a target. During an emergency meeting at Ariana's mansion the next morning, she said clearly, "You need to get out of your apartment. Elliot, Mia, you both need to move here, where I have real security." "We can't just live in your home like that," Elliot began, clearly uncomfortable. "I don't want to owe you anything else." "This isn't a favor," Ariana cut in firmly. "This is a defensive strategy. They're attacking us individually. If we stay together, with professional security, we're safer." Mia placed a hand on her father's arm. "She's right, Dad. How am I supposed to work if I keep worrying someone will break in every night?" Reluctantly, Elliot agreed. That afternoon, they moved into the guest house on Ariana's estate. A smaller, separate building, but still bigger than anywhere Elliot had ever lived in his life. While Mia excitedly explored the rooms, Elliot remained in the living room, back straight, but hands unconsciously tightening. The high ceilings, designer furniture, expensive paintings on the walls, all of it made him feel like an ink blot on a perfect canvas. He stared out through the glass doors into the meticulously trimmed garden. It was hard to believe that just 48 hours earlier, he'd been in an apartment barely big enough for one person to turn around in. Ariana entered the room and stopped beside him. "You're uncomfortable," she observed without needing to ask. "I've lived 15 years in a small apartment," Elliot said in a low voice. "And this place, this isn't my world." Ariana stood beside Elliot for a long moment, as if giving him time to breathe in this unfamiliar space. Then she spoke gently. "Maybe it should be your world. You have talent, strength, Mr. Warren. You could have been in a place like this, or far better, if they hadn't taken everything from you." Elliot turned toward her, and for the first time since they met in the courtroom, he truly looked at Ariana. Not as a client, not as a billionaire, but as a woman fighting for justice alongside him. Her blue eyes, though tired, gleamed with something rare, genuine respect. "I don't need any of this," Elliot replied, his voice firm. "I never did. I want justice. I want to help people who have no voice. And after all these years, I finally have a chance to do that again." "By helping me," Ariana said. "By fighting those who believe money and power place them above the law," Elliot corrected. They stood silently in the wide living room, the afternoon sunlight filtering softly through the large glass wall. The distance between their worlds, a janitor who used to be a lawyer and a billionaire tech founder, was still there. But in that moment, it didn't feel as impossible as before. Something had shifted. Not because of what they said, but because they were standing side by side, facing a common enemy. And in that silence, they knew. The real battle had only just begun. The next major breakthrough came from a place no one could have imagined. At 2 in the morning, Julia Fenwick, Ariana's longtime COO, appeared at the gate, her face pale, clothes disheveled, hair blown out as if she had been out in the wind all night. Security immediately informed Ariana, and she hurried to wake Elliot. They met Julia in a small room separate from the main house, a safety measure in case this was a trap. Julia nearly collapsed when she saw Ariana. Her makeup was smeared with tears, her hands trembling violently. "I'm sorry," she blurted out at once. "I'm so sorry." "For what?" Ariana asked, her voice sharp as steel. Julia took a deep breath. "For everything. For copying the files. For passing information to them. For staying silent when I knew what they were doing to you." "Who is they?" Elliot asked. "Gregory Vance," Julia replied, her voice hoarse. "The CEO of Nexus Innovations. He came to see me 6 months ago. He knew about my mistake." "What mistake?" Ariana asked. Julia looked down at her hands, too ashamed to lift her head. 10 years ago, before I worked for you, I worked at another company. I embezzled $50,000. Not a lot, but still a crime. I paid the money back, and the company didn't call the police. I thought it was over." "But Vance found out," Elliot said. Julia nodded, tears spilling again. "He had documents, emails, bank statements, everything. He told me that if I didn't help him, he'd turn me in. I would go to prison." "So you chose to help him," Ariana said, her tone flat. "I copied the data. I told him your strategies. Julia choked up. "I even planted false information in some files to make it look like you accessed Nexus research." "Fabricated evidence," Elliot said darkly. "Exactly what they once did to me." "But why come here now?" Ariana asked, her gaze icy, but with a trace of pity. Julia pulled out a phone, not her own, but a high-end model completely out of place in her pocket. Elliot recognized it immediately. This wasn't Julia's personal phone. "Today," Julia said, her hands shaking, "I accidentally overheard Vance on the phone. He told someone about a permanent solution if the legal route failed." She swallowed hard. "They were talking about killing you, Ariana." The room suddenly felt freezing. "I know what I did was wrong. I know I betrayed you," Julia continued, voice breaking. "But I can't live with this, not with murder." She handed the phone to Elliot. "This is Vance's phone. I took it from his office. It has everything, messages, emails, and call recordings. The whole conspiracy." Elliot took the phone, feeling as if he were holding a grenade with the pin pulled. This could end the case. "Or end us," Mia said from the doorway. She had arrived without anyone noticing. "If they realize she took it." "They will know," Julia whispered. "Vance will search for the phone. By morning, if not sooner, he'll notice it's gone. That's why I came straight here." Ariana stared at Julia for a long moment. This woman had been by her side for 5 years, through stressful meetings, fundraising rounds, and sleepless nights. And now she was the one who had stabbed her in the back. But in those tear-filled eyes in front of her, Ariana saw not just fear, she saw remorse, real and deep. "You risked your own safety to come here," Ariana said, her voice softening for the first time. "I owe you more than that," Julia replied, trembling. "You gave me a chance when no one else would. You trusted me, and I betrayed that. This is the least I can do." Elliot didn't hesitate. "We need to copy every piece of data on this phone immediately. Mia, can you do it?" "Give me 15 minutes, Mia said, already opening her laptop. While Mia worked, Elliot asked Julia, "You know they'll come looking for you, right?" Julia nodded. "I know. You need to disappear, at least until the case is over." "I have a sister in Canada," Julia said. "I can go there." "Go now. Don't go home. Don't pack. Go straight there." 20 minutes later, all the data had been safely backed up onto Mia's encrypted server. In the darkness, Julia left in a taxi, never looking back. Elliot watched the car until its taillights vanished, wondering whether they were right to trust her, and whether she would survive the night. Ariana stood beside him, her voice soft but steady. "She truly is sorry." "Sorry doesn't erase the damage," Elliot said bluntly. "No," Ariana agreed, "but courage can redeem it. She knew they would retaliate and still came here." Elliot drew a long breath, his jaw tightening with iron determination. "Now, we have to use what she gave us, and we need to move fast, because once they realize we have this evidence—" He looked down at the phone in his hand, the live proof of a massive conspiracy. "They'll come at us with everything they have. They didn't have to wait long." The next morning, as Elliot, Mia, and Ariana were reviewing every piece of evidence inside Gregory Vance's phone, the estate's security alarms abruptly screamed through the intercom system. "Breach at the main gate," the security director reported. "Multiple individuals, armed." Ariana shot to her feet, locked down the entire property, and called the police. But as the security screens switched angles, the truth became unmistakable. 6 men in tactical uniforms, fully equipped, moving through the estate with the precision of people who had clearly received military training. "They're not police," Elliot said, his voice dropping. "Mercenaries," said Maddox, the head of security. "Ex-military or private contractors. They know exactly what they're doing." "We have to get out of here," Mia panicked. But the cameras showed 2 more vehicles blocking the back exit. No escape route left. Maddox, formerly NYPD, now head of Ariana's security, made a decision immediately. "Safe room! Move! Now!" He led them across the house, down to the basement, unlocking a steel door hidden behind a wine cabinet. Inside was a compact panic room, reinforced concrete walls, surveillance monitors, and a direct hardline to 911. "You'll be safe in here. This door can withstand explosives," Maddox said. "My team and I will hold them off as long as we can." "Police are on their way," Ariana said. "Earliest arrival is 15 minutes, Maddox replied. "We only need to survive 15. The door shut behind them with a cold metallic clack. Inside the panic room, the 3 stared at the surveillance screens. The mercenaries moved like shadows, silent, methodical, each step calculated. Maddox and the 4 guards under him were already in defensive positions. "They're going to die," Mia whispered, her hands trembling. "Those men are outgunned and outnumbered." "Maddox knows how to fight," Ariana said, trying to sound steady, but her voice shook. Then the gunfight began. On the monitors, the battle unfolded like a nightmare stripped of sound. Maddox and his team fought fiercely, using every corridor and blind spot. But the intruders were professionals, moving with flawless formation. 1 guard fell, 1 mercenary went down, but the attackers kept advancing. "They're heading for the basement," Elliot said. "They know we're here." "How do they—" Ariana stopped mid-sentence, her face draining of color. "Julia, she must have told them about the safe room. Or they had the floor plans from day 1, Mia said quickly. Either way, they know. Elliot looked around the room. One door, no windows, no backup exit, no weapons. They were trapped inside a metal coffin, waiting to be opened. On screen, a mercenary placed a device on the basement door. "They're planting explosives," Mia said, terror rising in her voice. Elliot dialed 911. "We're under attack at 247 Hudson Yards. Multiple armed assailants with explosives. We need immediate support." "The nearest unit is 3 minutes out," the operator said. "Stay inside." 3 minutes, but the explosives would blow in less than 1. Ariana squeezed Elliot's hand. "If this is how it ends—" "It isn't," he cut her off. "We've come too far. We don't end like this." Just as the device began to blink, seconds from detonation, an unexpected image flashed onto the monitors. Police vehicles. Then more police vehicles. Then SWAT armored trucks. Not 1 or 2, but nearly an entire strike force pouring into the estate. The mercenaries saw it too. They halted, exchanged hand signals, then retreated, disappearing as quickly as they arrived, leaving the explosive behind, still untriggered. "They're running!" Mia almost screamed in disbelief. 10 minutes later, SWAT secured the property, disarmed the device, and cleared every structure. When the panic room door finally opened, Elliot, Ariana, and Mia stepped out, faces pale but alive. A tall man in an FBI jacket was waiting, badge partially visible, Agent Blake Hollister. "Ms. Lockhart, Mr. Warren, I'm glad you're safe," he said. Ariana immediately asked, "How did you get here so fast?" "We've been monitoring Gregory Vance and his associates for weeks," Hollister said. "When a taxi driver reported transporting a woman matching Julia Fenwick's description toward the Canadian border, we knew something major had happened. We deployed a team immediately." "Is she safe?" Ariana asked softly. "Julia?" "She's under protective custody in Canada," Hollister said, "and she's agreed to testify in exchange for immunity." Elliot exhaled, years of weight releasing from his chest. "So we have enough to bring them down." "More than enough," Hollister replied, a thin, controlled smile forming. "We arrested Gregory Vance, 3 Atlantic Energy executives, and 6 other accomplices within the last hour. With the data from his phone, Fenwick's testimony, and this attack—" He straightened, his voice firm. "They're going to prison for a very, very long time." The next morning, when Elliot stepped into the courtroom, the atmosphere had completely changed. There were no longer curious stares treating him like a novelty. What replaced them was a quiet respect from the reporters. Even the prosecution attorneys looked drained, as though they had just survived a battle they knew they could never win. Judge Matthew Rourke, assigned after Judge Fisk recused herself due to a conflict of interest, struck his gavel to open the session. "I am aware there were significant developments overnight," he said. Prosecutor Catherine Morris rose, her shoulders nearly collapsed. "Your Honor, in light of the new arrests and the evidence presented this morning, the prosecution moves to dismiss all charges against Ms. Lockhart." The courtroom exploded. Reporters shouted. Camera flashes burst like lightning. Elliot remained seated, watching Morris with a strange sense of sympathy. She, too, had been a pawn in a game far larger than she could have comprehended. "The motion is granted," Judge Rourke declared. "Ms. Lockhart, you are free. And Mr. Warren." He paused, eyes lingering on Elliot. "This court has never witnessed such a remarkable act in pursuit of justice. You are deserving of every recognition that will follow." As they walked out of the courtroom, Ariana turned to Elliot, tears shimmering in her eyes. "We did it. We actually won." "You won," Elliot said gently. "You never gave up, not even when everything looked hopeless." Mia wrapped her arms around both of them, breaking the solemnity. "No, we won. As a team." 2 months later, Elliot stood outside a building on Fifth Avenue, looking up at the freshly mounted sign, "Warren and Warren Law, Anti-Discrimination and Civil Rights." Mia stood beside him, holding a brand-new law textbook. After everything she had witnessed, She had enrolled in law school, a decision born directly from the trial that changed their lives. "Do you think we can really run this place?" Mia asked. "We can," Elliot said. "We already have our first 3 clients. All of the people who were turned away because they couldn't afford an attorney." Mia smiled. "Thanks to the Lockhart Legal Justice Fund." Ariana had not only founded the fund with an initial $15 million contribution, she had rallied support from tech CEOs across the industry who had followed the trial closely. The fund would sponsor civil rights cases across America. As they entered the still-empty office, Elliot heard the sound of heels behind him. Ariana stood at the door, holding a bottle of champagne. "I thought we should celebrate a little," she said, her warm smile filling the bare room. Mia understood immediately. "I'll go look for some glasses. It might take a while." Then she slipped away, leaving Elliot and Ariana alone in the quiet office. They stood side by side in the unfinished room, wrapped in the peace that follows a storm. "I never properly thanked you," Ariana said softly, "for standing up that day, for believing in me when everyone else turned their backs." "There's nothing to thank," Elliot replied. "You gave me something I thought I had lost forever. A purpose." Over the past 2 months, through investigations, press conferences, and work for the foundation, something had shifted between them. It began as respect, then friendship. And now, standing here in the gentle afternoon light streaming through the windows, it had become something deeper. "Elliot," she said, calling him by his first name for the very first time. "I know we come from 2 different worlds. I know people will talk. But I've realized the only thing that truly matters." "What is it?" he asked quietly. "That the world doesn't matter. People's opinions don't matter. What matters is finding someone who understands you, stands beside you, and makes you a better version of yourself." She paused, then continued in a whisper. "And I've found that person." Elliot's heart stalled. Since Sarah died 15 years ago, he had never once allowed himself to love again. He buried the grief, buried the hope, buried the idea that he was worthy of another chance. But Ariana, who had seen past the janitor's uniform, past the scars, had broken through every wall. "I live a completely different life," Elliot said softly. "I have nothing but integrity," Ariana interrupted gently, "and courage, and kindness, and a heart that knows how to fight for what's right." She touched his hand. "I had money and success. What I didn't have was someone who saw me as a human being." Elliot looked down at their hands, one soft, one calloused, different, yet fitting together with impossible ease. "Sarah was the love of my youth," he said. "I thought that part of my life was over." "But?" Ariana asked, her voice nearly a breath. "But maybe we are given more than one chance," he said, "if we're brave enough to take it." They stood there in a silence so gentle it felt like the world had paused outside. Then Elliot leaned in, slow, careful, tender. The kiss was a promise from 2 people who had been broken, had lost so much, yet still found the courage to hope again. Mia's voice suddenly echoed from the back room. "I can't find any glasses. We might have to buy some." Elliot and Ariana burst into laughter, the private moment dissolving into warm ease. "Come on," Ariana said, taking Elliot's hand. "Let's show your daughter her new office. And maybe tonight, the 3 of us can go out to dinner." "I'd like that," Elliot said. Before stepping out, he paused at the door, looking once more at the sign. Warren and Warren Law. A new beginning. A second chance. No, he corrected himself silently. A second life. Elliot Warren's story reminds us that it is never too late to begin again. That justice isn't measured by wealth or status, but by courage and the unshakable will to fight back. That heroes come in many forms, sometimes wearing cleaning gloves instead of a tailored suit. He shows us that failure is not the end, that betrayal can be overcome, and that even after the deepest losses, love can still find its way back. Most importantly, Elliot proves that every one of us has the power to stand up, to speak out, and to fight for what is right, no matter who tries to silence us. If you were in Elliot's place, what would you choose? A stable corporate job with a high salary? Or starting a new path to defend those who have no voice? Share your answer below. And if this story of perseverance and justice moved you, don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss the next extraordinary stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And share this video with someone who needs a reminder that one person standing up for what's right can change the world. Thank you for watching. I will protect her. And remember, justice doesn't always wear an expensive suit, and love can bloom in the most unexpected places. Never give up hope. Never stop fighting. And never underestimate the power of one good person with the courage to stand tall.